Okay, so our final discussion on I.A. Richards' figurative language. Earlier in our earlier session, we have seen that how we have tried to analyze one another poem, that was Health Ringing Health. And we tried to study the poem by making various circles and trying to connect with various things. It is expected that when the poems are given to you, when we give poems to you, you are also supposed to do the similar things with the poem. And so that will be the proof that you have analyzed the poem thoroughly. But if you don't do anything on the text, then you are not working on the poem. So somehow you will have to make a physical manifestation of what you have done with the poem. You may be working on a digital text, not a printed one, but on a digital text also, what do you do? That you have to keep it with you. So you can say that this is your example of your analysis of the poem. This is the physical manifestation of your analysis of the poem. So keep something like this also when the poems are given to you. Tomorrow, Sunday, we won't have any lectures, but you will have several poems to read. In email, I will send some 12 of poems in Gujarati, English, Hindi, and you will be allotted one particular poem also. 1 or 2 poems will be allotted, but you are supposed to read all the poems. You are supposed to read all the poems and try to do analysis, which we will discuss on Monday. On Monday, we will discuss that. But well, in this final part of the analysis of I.A. Richards' figurative language, he has discussed third poem. Third poem that he discussed is about climb cloud and pencil all the blue. Climb cloud and pencil all the blue. Let me share the screen. Yes, this poem, third poem, climb cloud and pencil all the blue with your miraculous stockade. Stockade means ek lasarko karo. Koi canvas upar apne pichino lasarko kariye. E rite. Climb cloud and pencil all the blue with your miraculous stockade. The earth will have her joy of you and limn your beauty till it fade. The earth will be happy when you will make painting on it. Earth is the canvas, cloud is going there, and cloud is something like having some pencil in the hand and is making some sketches on the canvas, that is earth. So what is an imagery? Imagery is like cloud is going and the shadow of the cloud is moving on the earth. Shadow. Now that shadow is as if under the control of cloud, as if cloud has a control over the shadow, and when the shadow is moving, the poet is visualizing that is the painting made by, or stockades made by cloud on the canvas, that is earth. And as it moves on, it will pass through the wheat plains, the grass plains, meadows, grazing cattles, herds, over all those things. And there is one imagery that comes here, is that you go and frighten the cattle, frighten the cattle. This, so that way this cloud is having one character. Cloud is the central character, we can say here, and cloud also has a particular character which it moves in that way. Many of the critics raised the problem. With the very first problem was this over literal or scientific reading of the poem, that how can cloud hold pencil in the hand? Yeah? That is the first problem that came. Then also, like the grazing cattles, even if the cloud can hold pencil imaginatively, but still, even if it will draw something, that is the shadow of the cloud on a grazing plain, then also grazing cattle are never frightened by the shadow of the cloud. They are much habituated with that, because that is their day in and day out. So that also never happens. So how has this poet or the speaker or the viewer in the poetry, how is this viewer or speaker visualizing all these kinds of things, how the cattle are getting frightened and all so it seems very far-fetched kind of a thing that is being there. And apart from that, there are other questions also which are raised from this poem. Very quick overview. Let me share the screen. We're not reading the poem, but you can do your own study of the poem as we have done earlier. Okay? Puzzle the cattle, yes, puzzle the cattle at the grass, paint your pleasure on their flanks, and shudder down those golden ranks. So this is how the dark, this cloud keeps on moving, and it keeps on telling this all things there. So this is this poem about moving cloud here. Three comments on this poem from three different critics bring out the dangers of over literal examination of figurative language. Okay? So very first thing is we also will question ourselves that if I do over literal reading, what kind of things I read, what way I can problematize the poem, and then I will try to give my answers to that also. So presumably the first line means cloud obliges by climbing, penciling, etc. The whole poem is a choice example of ugliness, of romantic animism. Romantic animism. Now this romantic animism means pathetic fallacy. Means pathetic fallacy. Now who will tell me what is pathetic fallacy? Romantic animism is pathetic fallacy. What is pathetic fallacy? What do we mean by pathetic fallacy?
The act of describing animals and things as having human feelings.
Okay, pathetic fallacy. Yeah, pathetic fallacy means attribution of human characteristics to nature. Attribution of human characteristics to nature. That is, can you give an example? Can anybody give an example? Even in the comment, if you can write one example of pathetic fallacy. One small phrase or something can you make and tell? Yes, everybody, you can put it in the chat, or you can come live and also give an example of pathetic fallacy. Use it. The meaning, you know, meaning is aware. Are you aware about the meaning, or you want still a better way of reading the meaning? Let me put it in the chat.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have put it in the chat also. Attribution of human characteristics to nature. The attribution of human characteristics to nature or to inanimate object, like a mobile phone, chair, table. These are inanimate objects. Inanimate objects, table, chair, or to animals. Okay, Latta has put the comment, wind whispered through the trees, or the flowers danced in the breeze. Yeah. So what is pathetic fallacy there, Latta? What can be seen as pathetic fallacy? Yes, Lata, can you tell what is? So if you give an example, if somebody is asking you in an interview that, well, what is pathetic fallacy here, then how will you explain? Anybody else also, you can read in the comment, and if you can explain me. Answer, see, if Google will give you answer, but how do you understand those answers? Another problem that we are talking about.
Sir,
Yes.
tears. Window describe that whisper tears. So tears is the human emotions. Only human has a tears. Window won't has a tears. So tears may be considered as a pathetic. Maybe.
Is it tears or trees? Trees.
The window whispered through the trees. Oh, sorry, sir.
Trees.
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
it's my
see,
mistake.
tears, even animals have tears. Yeah. Animals
Yeah.
also have tears. Yeah. Tears is something that you find in animals also. Inanimate you cannot find. Yeah. If you said that my mobile is crying, if I say my mobile is crying, then it is fine. My mobile is tired. When I say, if I say my mobile is discharged, well, it is not. But if it is tired, then mobiles never get tired. It get discharged. Humans get tired. Animals get tired. That you can say. So inanimate, you say mobile got tired. You are using that word. Okay. The opposite of that also is that I got discharged. I got discharged. Instead of telling that I am tired, I am fatigued, I say I am discharged. So, but I am not an instrument. I am not a battery operated individual that I can get discharged. Yeah. Okay. So that is the opposite of that. Okay. But still, yes, the flower can't dance. Flower is that, yeah, the flower danced in the breeze. Now, flower can't dance. Instead of that, Lata, you can say that dancing is an attribute of human beings. Dancing is an attribute of human being or characteristics of human being, which you are seeing in the flower. Flowers are just moving because of wind. Like if I am dancing, I am moving my hands. Flowers cannot move itself. It is the wind that is moving the flower, and it seems like it is dancing. But પવન ના આવતો હોય ને પુષ્પને એમ થાય કે મારે નાચવું છે તો એ ન નાચી શકે. આપણે નાચી શકીએ. That is how. Okay. Somber clouds darkened our mood. Yeah. What is this one in that? How do you see? How will you explain that?
Yes, sir. In this sentence, if anybody says this sentence, it has a meaning that darkened clouds, dark, it means dark cloud. Dark cloud affects a human mind. That
No, that is no, pathetic.
seeing
No,
those
pathetic fallacy. You are explaining pathetic fallacy. Yeah. Pathetic fallacy means what? That explanation, attribution of human characteristics to nature. Yeah. The attribution of human characteristics to nature or to yes. Yeah.
It means that some kind of natural natural things effects on human mind.
No. Read the definition again. Read. It is not so. It is not so. It has nothing to do with the effect on human mind. It is poetic work. It is language. It is study of language. We use this kind of language. We normally use, but we don't know that this is pathetic fallacy. And fallacy means what? See the word fallacy. What do we mean by fallacy? It is mistaken belief or idea.
About the definition. Definition's
okay.
Meaning, sir. I not understand properly.
Okay, we'll come to that. Now say fallacy. Fallacy means mistaken belief or idea, something that is believed to be true but is erroneous. It is mistaken. It is believed to. That is fallacy. And here it is pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy. Here it is. So pathetic fallacy means attribution of human characteristics to nature or natural things or animals or inanimate objects. Now, what are human attributes? Like smiling is human attribute. Smiling, or you can say a kind of anger, for example. Anger is human attribute. If I see in terms of trees or inanimate object or cloud or wind, then they will not have anger. They will not have anger. Love is human attribute, which you will find with animals, but you will not find with other natural objects. Like trees cannot love, or wind or cloud or daffodils. They cannot have this idea about love. So love, anger, this all emotions are very much connected with human beings. This makes what we call it as human characteristics. Human characteristics. So if I use the word angry waves, waves દરિયાના મોજા, angry waves. Now દરિયાના મોજા ક્યારેય ગુસ્સામાં ન હોય. Angry થવું એ દરિયાનું કામ જ નથી. દરિયો જ હોય, એનું કામ કરતા હોય, that is a part of that. ગુસ્સો કરવો એ મનુષ્યનો સ્વભાવ છે. હવે જયારે આપણો સ્વભાવ આપણે જયારે ઇનએનિમેટ ઓબ્જેક્ટ્સ કે નેચરને આપીએ, કુદરતના કોઈ પણ ભાગને આપણો સ્વભાવ આપીએ અને વાત કરીએ ત્યારે એને પેથેટિક ફેલેસી કહેવાય છે. So when you want to explain this Bhumika's sentence, somber clouds, then we can say that sombrity is human attribute. It is characteristics of human being. It is not of cloud. And when you say this, you are making that word somber cloud is what you say is pathetic fallacy, because sombrity is the characteristics of human attribution, not of cloud. Okay? Then now see this one. Khushbu, you said dog keeps barking, moon keeps shining. Now how do you see their pathetic fallacy?
It is, I think, proverb, and those people who are more successful, now they will find more people to pull down them. And there is one story also of two frogs who were in a well. They were deaf. So people, other frogs outside the well were telling that now you cannot come out and all that. But the frog was deaf. So he thought that they are encouraging me, they are cheering me up. So he tried and tried and tried. Then he finally, it came out. So then others asked him that, how did you came out? These people were criticizing you and all that. So he told that the frog was deaf. So he told that I thought you all are encouraging. So criticism.
No, but okay, but we are asking about pathetic fallacy. How is this sentence having pathetic fallacy?
Another example I can give: books in running brooks. Then,
running brooks, okay, running brooks, only running brooks, that phrase only. Running brooks is an example. So you said that running is an attribute of human beings, or human, and then you are giving to the rivulet or a brook. So that is example, pathetic fallacy. Okay, okay, fine. Then Chandni, Shakespeare uses particularly in his play Macbeth to describe the dark murder of the Duncan. But where, how? Chandni, can you give example? How is Shakespeare using, what are the words used by William Shakespeare in Macbeth? Sajivaropan Alankar, yes, you can call that. Lata has said that, yeah. Books in the running brooks, books in the running brooks, again, no, running brooks only. Yeah? Running brooks only, you can say. This running is an attribute of a human which you are giving to the brooks there. Okay, but I hope you got the idea. Pathetic fallacy. And there is lots of personification connected with that. Personification that is connected. So whenever you try to personify any of the inanimate object, you normally use pathetic fallacy. જે વ્યક્તિ નથી એને વ્યક્તિ તરીકે ગણવાનો, અથવા કપડાને કલ્પના હોવી, milk ne smile karvu. This all are pathetic fallacies which are being working in that context. Giving emotions to something non-human. Yes, raindrops wept around him. Yeah, raindrops wept. That is the word you can say, raindrops wept. And then you can say weeping is not the attribute of raindrops. It is the attribute of human that is given to that. Okay, pathetic fallacy. Now, there are very interesting fallacies which new critics found. This was one of those fallacies that we make use of, but we are not aware about. Then there was this another fallacies which was given by Wimsatt and Beardsley. W.K. Wimsatt. W-I-M-S-A-T-T. W.K. Wimsatt and Monroe Beardsley. B-E-A-R-D-S-E-L-E-Y. Beardsley. W.K. Wimsatt and Beardsley. In their work, the name of the work was The Intentional Fallacy. The Intentional Fallacy, which was published in 1949. They gave two words, intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Fallacy means some kind of errors or mistakes that people make when they read the language of poetry. This affective fallacy means that it refers to the supposed error of judging or evaluating a text on the basis of its emotional effects on a reader. Yes, I'm repeating again. The error of judging or evaluating a text on the basis of its emotional effects on the reader. Yeah? So if you just analyze the poetry by what is the emotional effect of the poem, then it is called affective fallacy. Affective fallacy. Intentional fallacy means it is the fallacy because an author is not the part of the text. When we try to say that this is the intention of the poet, then it is intentional fallacy. Now, we are not supposed to consider poet as part of poetry. We are not supposed to consider poet as part of poetry because depersonalization has already happened. He is a platinum rod, and the mind that suffers, the man that suffers and the mind that creates are separated. So you don't connect those. So you will say that the speaker and the poetry is speaking. So speaker in that, not the poet. So you are keeping. So whenever we go for the intention of the poet, there is another fallacy. And that is Wimsatt and Beardsley are telling that. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't analyze poem with all these fallacies. Still, I can analyze a poem saying that it is affective fallacy. It is an effect on me. So I am analyzing that. It is still I can do, but I can now give a name that this is affective fallacy operating when I am analyzing a poem, or when I am trying to read the intent, because I know some part of the biography of the poet. Some part of the biography of the poet I am aware about. So I can use that part and say that the intention of the poet was this. That also gets connected in different ways. So when we know that Wordsworth escaped into the Lake District because he was frustrated from French Revolution, and they were frustrated from that, and so they ran away. So there is escapism into the romanticism of William Wordsworth. Escapism is there, and so they are going to the Lake District as a part of picnic. They are going as a part of picnic. So that we are aware about. We are aware that Robert Frost is a farmer. Robert Frost is a farmer. That also we are aware about. Now, with that, we are reading the poem that the nature in Wordsworth will be like this because he is going for a picnic. Frost is a farmer, so it's a very hard life to deal with the nature. You have to fight with the nature to find your space there. So his poetry will deal in a different. These are biographical, and so it is helping me the reading of a poem. In a new criticism, I am supposed to forget that. When I do new criticism, I am just supposed to read words. Are there words telling me something or not? I should not remember whether this is a farmer, this has gone for a picnic, or whatsoever the things are. I am not supposed to see all those things there. Okay, so these are some of the fallacies which comes here, and this poem, one of the critics observed that it has romantic animism, that is called pathetic fallacy, and says ugliness of romantic animism. Ugliness. So this critic is looking at negatively at this too much of animism or giving human attributions to non-animate or animal objects. If the wind had changed, would the poet have not got angry? Yeah. Puzzled the cloud. So the cloud is moving. So it tries to give a character to cloud, this poem, in such a way that as if cloud is in control of itself and cloud decides where to move. As if I want to go and puzzle the cattle, then I want to go on the rakes of the wheat field, then I will go on the hut of the villages. Well, the critic says clouds do not have any control. Clouds will have to go wherever the wind will take them. If the breeze will change, the clouds will go in that direction. This is over literal. This is over literal or over scientific reading of the poem that comes here. But this is a very interesting objection, which we rarely find. It is not easy to find such objections also, that cloud cannot decide where to go. Okay? Then this poet tumbles over his metaphor, pencil, and that miraculous chord that is also given here. It also is an interesting passage. When you will read, you will get to know what objections are raised here. So this is there. And in the third point, which is very important point, there is a comparison with Shelley's another poem, P.B. Shelley's poem, Ode to the West Wind. And it says that Shelley, in writing the Ode to the West Wind, conceived of the wind as of a person with very definite characteristics: the uncontrollable, destroyer and preserver. That is the characteristics given to the wind by Shelley. Our poet, means this poetry, has no such clean conception, and the result is that his cloud is as a person with no character, doing all kinds of things, performing all kinds of antics. But why this cloud is doing all this thing, there is no idea. There is no idea. That is the objection that is raised here. Well, now the justification, it is given the value of personification. When we say animism, poetry will have animism and personification. So that way this poet can be pardoned on that ground here. So there is a very interesting paragraph on personification given here. Then over elaborate personification may be problematic sometimes. If the personification is over elaborated, then it can become problematic to the reader also to comprehend. Then this part discusses comparative criticism and the evils of comparative criticism, which is very important point. Because this observation is reading Ode to the West Wind and saying that the character of wind is very well described as compared to the character of a cloud here. So Richards warns his readers against the dangers of over simple form of comparative criticism. And this is to be kept in mind. Many times in your presentations also, when you try to compare one text with another one, many times many students do over simple comparative study also. In the third comment quoted above, the critic has compared the present poet with Shelley and has pointed out that the present poet has not succeeded in doing what Shelley has done, and that Shelley is much clearer in his conceptions. But before making such comparisons, we should try to determine the ends of ends. Ends here, the word ends means objective. Ends here means objective. Aim. Ends means aim of. Determine aims. Aims of two poets. For it, if their ends differ, their means are also bound to differ. As two readers are already parallel in their intents, so that also will happen. So before we compare the things, we also have to see that what are the aims of the poets, what are they trying to do, and then what vehicles they have used. The one has used wind as a vehicle, the another has used cloud as a vehicle. Their tenor was something, they wanted to say this or the other kinds of things, but what way they are using, that is very important when we try to do that. Then I.R. Richards talks about visual memory. As earlier also we have remembered, we have referred to this idea that whenever we read words on paper, there should be some kind of visual popping up of images in our mind. Visual popping up of images is necessary. So we have to constantly keep on asking ourselves. We have to constantly keep on asking that whenever the words come, what pops up in my mind? If I say pink elephant, for example, pink elephant. So what comes in your mind? Well, you find that, well, elephant is always brown, blackish brown. Now pink, you will take some time. You will take some time to draw pink color over the brownish elephant, and it will not be easy to find. When I say pink elephant, what I can see is that decorated elephant comes in my mind. Decorated elephants, which are used for the religious processions, or the people who come out on the road to beg with the help of through elephants, begging people to, and they decorate. The body is painted. That elephant suddenly comes in the mind. But completely pig elephant in the forest is unimaginable, very difficult for me to comprehend. So whenever I see or read a poetry, how the images are coming. This is what we were doing in reading the Westland also. Even in there we wanted to say that there are all images. Let us try to break entire poem into various images. And then we will see that, well, when we come near the poetry, it's all images. When we take a distance, one oral picture is coming. And that is a kind of a rosary bead. All these beads are small images. And when they are connected, they become a kind of a rosary bead. And people say, why rosary? Because it has spirituality. You can't say it is Mangal Sutra, because it's not talking about marriage. It is talking about religion. So I have to go into the semantic field of religion or spirituality rather than in the semantic field of marriage and other thing. So rosary bead becomes an exact idea that we do there. So visualization, how we visualize, that is very important. Our visualizations conflict with each other, like there is night and dawn, then we will question that how can dawn remain present when night is there. And then you said that, well, if you take a little bit more distance, just go little bit farther in the space, and you will find from there, here there is midnight, here there is morning, here there is afternoon, here there is evening, everything simultaneously existing on the earth. That is possible. So this all analysis are possible when we do that. But visual memory plays a very vital role in looking at all these things. Nature of poetic truth. Final 2 points in this essay. Second last is nature. Third last, I think it is nature of poetic truth. And again, he says that poetic truth is different from scientific truth. It is a matter of emotional belief rather than intellectual belief. It is not a matter of verification, but of attitude and emotional reaction. So that should be kept in mind, that poetry is also for emotional reaction also. Though we should not have the affective fallacy by just taking emotional reaction to something and not taking pain of reading a poetry. કાવ્ય તો ઇમોશન માટે છે, મેં વાંચ્યું, મેં સાંભળ્યું અને મજા આવી ગઈ. કે તો કોઈ પૂછે શેમાં મજા આવી, શું હતું એમાં કે મજા આવી, તો કે બસ એ મજા આવી, એ મને ન પૂછો શેમાં મજા આવી. કારણ કે એ જોવા માટે ભાષામાં જવું પડે અને ભાષાને ખોલવી પડે, અને એ માથાનો દુખાવો થાય. એ માથાનો દુખાવો મારે નથી જોતો, મને તો પોયમ વાંચી એટલે બસ મજા આવી. But as a student of literature, we should be having a capacity to explain, why am I happy? Why am I unhappy? Why am I sad today? Why I am so happy? All I have to describe, and I should have words, even metaphors to describe I am happy because of 1, 2, 3, 4 points. કોઈ રિક્ષા ચાલક હોય, રિક્ષા ચાલક એટલે લેમેન આપણે કહીએ, એ સિનેમા જોવા જાય ને પછી કે સિનેમા કેવું લાગ્યું, તો કે જકાસ. લિટરેચરનો વિદ્યાર્થી એમ ન કે જકાસ, કે એ તો એની પાસે એક ભાષા હોય, ઘણી બધી વોકેબ્યુલરીનો ઉપયોગ કરે, કે ફિલ્મનો પ્લોટ આવો હતો, કેરેક્ટર્સ આ હતા, સ્ક્રિપ્ટ આવી હતી, બેકગ્રાઉન્ડ મ્યુઝિક આવું હતું. એ તો ખૂબ ઊંડેથી એનાલિસિસ, ફ્રેમ સ્ટડી કરે અને ઘણી બધી જુદી વાત કરે. ખાલી જકાસ કહીને આનંદ ન લે, કારણ કે એ સાહિત્યનો વિદ્યાર્થી છે, એ લેમેન નથી. He is not a layman. So that difference we have to start feeling, that I am not a layman. I should not react to literature as a layman, and I can't say that, well, this is beautiful or this is very ugly. Snobbish attitude, oh kharab che bau, oh bau saras che. But here we are balanced, keeping a balance. So we try to stay away from fallacies, affective fallacy or intentional fallacy or any other kinds of fallacies that come there. So nature, then we say that it has its own poetic truth that we have to keep in mind. 2 kinds of metaphors are there, which when we study metaphor, we can see that it is sense metaphor and emotive metaphor. Sense metaphor and emotive metaphor can be seen. Now, to give you a very quick example of sense metaphor and emotive metaphor, we can say that sense metaphor is something like, for example, if I call somebody that he's like a donkey. He's like a donkey. Now, donkey has a sense. Donkey has a sense of something, and that sense is about being very adamant. Or donkey is a metaphor which people don't like to take as an attribute. If I call somebody that you are like a horse, or you are like a lion or a tiger, તો મજા આવે કે ના બરાબર, મને લાયન કીધું, મને ટાઈગર કીધું છે, હોર્સ પણ મજા આવે. પણ ડોંકી ના મજા આવે, કંઈક એમ થાય કે નહીં, આ ડોંકી શું કામ? ભાઈ, કારણ કે ડોંકીમાં કંઈક એવું મેટાફર છે કે થોડું લેઝી હોય, એને મારવું પડે, આમ સમજે નહીં, એની પોતાની સમજ ન હોય એમની પાસે, એમને મારે ત્યારે જે કામ કરે. અધરવાઇઝ ડોંકીઝ આર હાર્ડ વર્કિંગ. ડોંકીઝ આર હાર્ડ વર્કિંગ. હોર્સ એટલી બધી મજૂરી ન કરે, જેને આપણે ગધા મજૂરી કહેતા હોય છે. ગધા મજૂરી ખરી. ગધા મજૂરી એટલે જેનું આઉટપુટ કાંઈ ન હોય, મજૂરી ખૂબ હોય પણ આઉટપુટ નીલ હોય, એને આપણે ગધા મજૂરી કહીએ છીએ. એટલે ગધેડો કામ ખૂબ કરે પણ આઉટપુટ કશું જ ન હોય. ઘોડો કામ ન કરે પણ એનો જયારે કામ કરે ત્યારે બહુ કામ નું કરે. કોઈ વોર ફાઇટ હોય અને ફાઇટમાં તમારે ચેતક જેવો ઘોડો હોય તો એ કઈ રીતે મદદ કરે એના સવારને લડવા માટે. સો દેટ એ ડોંકી પાસે અપેક્ષા આપણે ન રાખીએ. So there is a sense in donkey, there is a sense in horse, there is a sense in tiger, in lion, and when people are told that you are like this, people may feel happy or unhappy. There is sense metaphor. They take a sense, a particular sense. So if I want to tell somebody that you are very hard working, then I can't use the word that you are like a donkey. You work like a donkey. એમ આપણે કહીએ ભલે આપણો ટોન એમ કે તોય વખાણ કરો તોય સામેવાળી વ્યક્તિને મજા ના આવે. That you work like a donkey કહીએ તો no, they don't like it, because there is a sense is something that is derogatory in that. Now another one is emotive metaphor. Now in emotive metaphor, one example we have seen, મોરના ઈંડા ચિતરવા ન પડે. Now this metaphor has nothing to do with peacock. મોર સારો છે, ખરાબ છે, સુંદર છે, એને એના સાથે લેવા દેવા જ નથી. જેમ ડોંકી સાથે સેન્સમાં લેવા દેવા હતી, એમ આ વસ્તુને મોર સાથે કોઈ જ લેવા દેવા નથી. અહીંયા તો પેલી વાત છે કે બાપ એવા બેટા, વડ જેવા ટેટા ને બાપ એવા બેટા, માટી એવી ઠીકરી ને મા એવી દીકરી. આ પ્રકારનો ભાવ છે આમાં ભાવ કયો છે કે like father like son, like parents like children, like father like son, like parent like, it has nothing to do with peacock. That is emotive metaphor. So it is trying to tell that. So that is two kinds of metaphors he speaks there. And finally in the essay he says the aim of the poem. Aim of the poem, that is very, very important to keep in mind when we do verbal study, a thorough verbal study. At that time we also have to keep in mind that what is the basic aim of the poem, which should not be forgotten. A proper understanding of figurative language requires close study. Its literal sense must be carefully followed, but such literal reading, see, he is giving an alarm here, he is warning us, but such literal reading must not come in the way of an imaginative appreciation of it. Imaginative appreciation, that space should always be given. That is for imaginative interpretation, imaginative appreciation of poem. A judicious balance must be struck between literalism and imaginative freedom. The aim of the poem must be clearly understood, for without such an understanding, any judgment of the means the poet has used would be fallacious. Yes, the aim of the poem must be clearly understood, and then he will write what is the aim. And then he says, without such an understanding, any judgment or any criticism, any analysis, any interpretation of the means of the poet has used would be fallacious. The critic must also refrain from applying his own external standards to the work of art. As Richards puts it, the chemist must not require that the poet writes like a chemist, nor the moralist, not the man of affairs, nor the logician, nor the professor, that he writes as they would. The whole trouble of literalism is that the reader forgets that the aim of the poem comes first and is the sole justification of its means. We may quarrel, frequently we must, with aim of the poem, but we have first to ascertain what it is. We cannot legitimately judge its means by external standards, such as accuracy of fact or logical coherence, which may have no relevance to its success in doing what it is set to do. So he says we may quarrel, means we may disagree in our interpretations. It is not necessary that we all agree for the interpretation of the poem. But while we are disagreeing what is the aim of the poem, are we keeping that in mind or not? And then everything can be set out. Finally, he says, let us conclude by throwing light on what do we mean by the aim of the poem. And this is very important final paragraph. What is the aim of the poem? He clarifies, he defines the aim of the poem. Richards means the whole state of mind, the mental condition, which in another sense is the poem. Roughly, he means by it the collection of impulses which shaped the poem originally, to which it gave expression, and to which in an ideally susceptible reader it would again give rise. He does not mean by its aim any sociological, aesthetic, commercial or propagandist intentions or hopes of the poet. So what he says here is that what were the impulses in the mind of the poet out of which the poem has come out, if that impulses are also arising in the minds of the reader, then aim of the poetry is achieved. Then it is achieved. Now, when we are reading this poem about king, and if we cannot get that this poem is about euphoria of happiness, forget about on what occasion the happiness was, whether it was anniversary or birthday or marriage or whatever kinds of thing. But at least this feeling that it is about happiness, it is about outpouring happiness. Even if that we cannot get, then whatever reading we will do will be faulty reading, reading. So the impulse, the basic impulse, we are not able to get. That's why we start with what is overall sense, what is the feelings evoked, what are the impulses which might have given rise to this poem, and on grounds of that only, that poem, even if it has lots of problems of metaphors and language and diction, I.A. Richards pardons the poet and says, because that impulse was of euphoria, and out of euphoria, when you speak something, little bit of mistake may happen. So then it is pardonable also. So this is what I.A. Richards writes in figurative language, and he gives us a practical way of analyzing a poetry. He gives a practical way of analyzing the work of art, the poetry here. Any questions if you have now? Any questions in understanding this part, that is figurative language? Yes, anybody? Got the point about everything about this then? Okay, so for tomorrow you will get some poems to read in the same line. Practically we'll try to see how we can read the language of poetry. And Monday we will ask you. By tomorrow you will get an email. So you will get your poem also, but I suggest you to read all the poems and try to understand those. And we will analyze on Monday some of the poems. And very soon you will get your thinking activity and online test based on this unit also. Okay. Okay, so we end our session here. Okay.